daily hearing of a criminal case against him.
On Friday, June 16, 2023, the lawyer for Mr. Gyakye Quayson prayed the court to halt the trial until after the pending by-election in the Assin North constituency to allow Mr. James Quayson, who is the NDC candidate, time to prepare for the election. This prayer was, however, opposed by the Attorney General. He argued that expediting the trial would determine the fate of the accused person well in time for the election. Justice Mary Mamie Kwayanzu, after listening to the parties, held the argument of the Attorney General and subsequently ordered daily hearing of the matter starting from Tuesday, June 20, 2023.
Counsel for the accused person made a point that AG on the last agenda date said the accused person is being irresponsible from what he said in court today. If that is contained in the affidavit in support, then we will need time to also respond to say, because every single word that the AG uttered on the last agenda date was proper. In fact, he was able to convince the court the need for the matter to be heard on a daily basis. So we are seeing as to why they are talking about an attack on the accused person, but we are waiting. They are saying that AG said the accused was being irresponsible. We don't know why they are coming by such a deposition. As I said, we don't know what they stated exactly in the affidavit in support. We just heard it. So we just want to say the affidavit, they can respond appropriately.
Lawyers for the former MP filed the instant application on Monday, June 19, 2023, in which they made a number of claims.
It's fair, we got what we wanted. Once the Attorney General complains of short service and they needed to respond to our application, it's only fair that the court gives an opportunity to reply to our application. So to call somebody irresponsible when he's embarked on a democratic process, and that because he's embarked on that democratic process, he's irresponsible, shouldn't be coming from Attorney General. And the Minister of Justice. If I'm Minister of Justice, you must ensure that justice is done to all manner of persons. And so that was an irresponsible comment from the Attorney General. He doesn't act like an Attorney General. Our problem has been with the day-to-day hearing, the daily hearings, and we shall make a strong case for the matter to be adjourned beyond 27th.
They said some extremely prejudicial, unjustified and insulting remarks of the Attorney General seek to prejudice the outcome of the trial and amount to a denial of the constitutional right of the accused to a fair trial, and would also deny the people of Assin North constituency the right to vote for a candidate of their choice, which is also a constitutional right.
On security, let's take you to the north. An immigration officer at Naro in the Nadole Kalio district of the Upper West region threatened to shoot a GBC correspondent in the Upper West region who wanted to pass water when they were asked to stop at a checkpoint. One of the officers asked him to cross the road to the other side, to which he declined and explained that crossing to that side would expose him to danger.
We were on our way from Wa to Bolaga. And when we got to Noro is just about 30 minutes drive from Wa. We got to the immigration checkpoint. They stopped us. We stopped. Our driver decided to go into the bush to free himself. I also decided to urinate. So I went to the officers and requested for a kettle, which was just behind them. So they asked me to use the kettle. I took it. I was moving away. I saw a structure made up of zinc, which looked like a washroom. So I asked them whether I could use the washroom. They said no, I couldn't use it. So I said, then let me move away into the bush. And there was one officer there. He told me that no, I cannot go into the bush and urinate. And I said, why? He said, no, I can't bush and urinate. I have to leave where the side that the officers were and cross to the other side to go and urinate. And I said, this is very strange. I'm not urinating at where you are. I'm moving away to go and urinate. He said, no, I will not urinate on that side. I have to cross. And I said, no, I cannot put my life at risk. when you are crossing the road and something happens to you, who takes responsibility? So I told him that I wasn't going to cross the road to urinate. And some of them joined me to urinate. So he said that if I'm a man, I should go and urinate. And I said, okay, once I'm not urinating at where you are, and I'm going far away to go and urinate in the bush, I will go and urinate and come back. I was being too known. If I joke, he will blow my head off. So when he said that, I said no. So I quickly brought out my phone and gave to a colleague. I said, record this man. Have you heard him? He said he will blow off my head. At that time, the man I suspect was the leader of the officers, was then in some people who were also believed to be Fulanis. The Fulanis were squatting on the ground, I'm telling you. So I was wondering while even the thing was going on. Then all of a sudden, the officer by name Ajapon, he got up and came to me angrily. In fact, he poking my eye. I said, I was being too known. He will show me. And I said, show me for having done what? He said, wait. So he went into the office and came out with a pistol. That was the second gun that the senior officer went inside their office and brought out. When we came back, he cocked the gun. In fact, I was actually frightened. But if he kills me, my colleagues are there. My only crime was that I wanted to urinate, and he insisted that I must cross the road to the other side. So that was the situation. And I found that to be very, very strange, because they are rather supposed to protect civilians. But if the guns that you are given, you are rather using it to threaten civilians for having done anything, I don't think it is right.
Charles, I'll bring you any updates about the immigration officer who was threatening to blow off the head of GBC's correspondent in the Upper West region. Well, the Ghana Bar Association says it is leading a campaign for national policy that will ensure that persons who are incarcerated leave the prison walls with a skill or formal education. According to the national president of GBA, Mr. Yaw Acheampong Boafo, such a move will reduce recidivism and decongest the prisons through social justice. Mr. Boafo announced this when GBA presented cash to the management of Nsawam prisons for the payment of examination fees for 10 inmates who are BECE candidates. The association also donated assorted items to the male inmates of the prison.
In 2019, 59 inmates of the Nsawam prisons were admitted by the University of Cape Coast to pursue various diploma programs in business and education through the distance education. This initiative is what the Ghana Bar Association is asking to be replicated in all public schools across the country. The president of the GBA, Mr. Yaw Acheampong Boafo, said the association is leading the campaign for government to formulate a national policy to ensure that people who are incarcerated leave the prisons with skills of formal education to check recidivism. Mr. Boafo also announced that the association is working with the Attorney General to reform the country's sentencing regime to decongest the prison. When the association presented cash to the prison management to pay for the examination fees of 10 inmates who are BECE candidates, Mr. Boafo said there is the need for a national orientation for the youth to learn to live within their means so they are not lured into crime. The association also donated assorted items to the male inmates of the prison. The Public Relations Officer of Nsawam Prisons, Superintendent of Prisons, Abdul Latif Adamu, said inmates at various prisons in the country have been succumbed to poor living conditions. Currently, there are over 3,000 males in the Nsawam medium security prison. Mr. Adamu said government alone cannot adequately cater for the welfare of inmates and prison officers and called on organizations and individuals to help make life much easier for them. Mr. Adamu thanked the GBA for the gesture and assured them the items would be used for the intended purpose.
Let's go to Parliament now, where the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, Mr. Samuel Abu Jinapor, says the Tamale Abu timber market has been leased out to a private developer since December 2020 as part of government's redevelopment scheme. The Minister was answering questions on the popular market posed by the MP for Tamale North, Mr. Soyene Alhassan Saibu. Unfortunately, Mr. Soyene's request for a follow-up question was turned down by the Second Deputy Speaker of Parliament because he was not present at the time.
Abu timber market, measuring approximately 7 acres, falls within a public land situated a line along the Tamale-Haboya main road. This public land has been earmarked for redevelopment in accordance with government's urban redevelopment scheme to redevelop underutilized public lands to contribute to the socio-economic development of the country. Under the stewardship of my predecessor, Honorable Asumachireme, by a lease dated 15 December 2020, but taking effect from 29 August 2020, a portion of the land, measuring approximately 1.38 acres, has been granted to Fatu Kariban Company for a term of 50 years. To be able to commence with a redevelopment, the lessee must be granted vacant possession to the portion of the land granted. This will require the removal of some structures within the area. Mr. Speaker, the Lands Commission indicates to me that this is not a demolition exercise, as there are no permanent structures on the land. There are, however, a number of kiosks or containers that may be affected by this exercise.
Part of it have been sold because even if it's a lease, if a change money or something before you granted that 50 years lease, it's a member for the area, you want to be sure whether if they are going to remove those structures, whether compensation or people are duly informed so that people don't wake up one day and see their properties removed.
In land administration and land law, the concept is lease. You lease, you assign, you sublease. The concept of sold is alien. And so the word sold itself is problematic. That's why I didn't use the word sold. So, Speaker, secondly, the issue of compensation, I'll be reluctant in making further comments or detailed comments. The Lands Commission is working with the lessee and the occupants of these lands to resolve the issues involved.
Mr. Speaker, I got caught up in a committee meeting. I'll be grateful if you allow me to do a follow-up on the question number 1762.
No.
Meanwhile, the MP for Tamale North, Mr. Soyene Alhassan Saibu, who was not satisfied with the answer given by the Lands Minister, proceeded to address the media. He was disappointed that even though the Lands Commission had a meeting with the people of Tamale and assured them that the said timber market has not been sold, they did otherwise.
The Northern Regional Lands Commission held a press conference last year, 2021 May, to assure the people of Tamale that that piece of land had not been sold to a private developer. Is it not therefore shocking if you tell us that the lease is dated 15th December 2020? How does it take effect on 15th August 2020? Is it that it took effect before the lease was signed? What does this say about that press conference that was held in 2021? Clearly, there is something that is not right with the narrations that we are getting from the minister and also from the Regional Lands Commission. There is also no proposal to reallocate the people if there's a need to even use that land for another purpose. So this is so insensitive.
My little modest training in parliamentary practice is that when you ask a question, you, the sponsor of the question, you must be on the floor of the House to ask the question and ask supplementary questions so the Hansard will capture it. And secondly, I think he's engaged in a lot of misinformation and is attempting to mislead the public, particularly the people of Tamale. The claim by the Honorable Member of Parliament for Tamale North that the Lands Commission in Tamale has given out a statement which contradicts the statement I've given is false. It's false, and I should say it's irresponsible for a member of Parliament to peddle such falsehood, because the truth is that the records I gave to Parliament are records which are before the Regional Lands Office of Tamale, and this information I gave is information extracted from the Regional Lands Office of Tamale. The matters relating to the Tamale Timber Abuabu market are beyond and above reproach. The records are there for all of us to appreciate. It forms part of the broader scheme of government redevelopment.
Away from Parliament, let's do some business and trade. The African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat and the United Bank for Africa UBA have signed a $6 billion financing agreement aimed at increasing SME participation in the AFCFTA. Through the partnership, the UBA will dedicate the funds to capacity building of qualified African SMEs which want to participate in intra-African trade under the AFCFTA.
According to the two sides, the MOU is based on the shared vision of the AFCFTA and UBA to transform the African economy by strengthening SMEs to deepen their critical roles as the engine of economic growth. Secretary General of the AFCFTA, Mr. Wamkele Mene, said the partnership will focus on developing 4 priority areas of pharmaceuticals, transport and logistics, automotive and agriculture and agro-processing. The Deputy Group Managing Director of UBA, Meyiwa Akinyemi, emphasized that partnering with AFCFTA is the best way to drive the growth of SMEs in Africa. He said developing transport and logistics and creating market access will help SMEs overcome challenges to play their critical roles in job creation, wealth creation, and poverty eradication.
SMEs are the engine for growth and development. If you have to achieve the 16 trillion GDP by 2050, it has to be a deliberate, intentional development for the SMEs. And a critical thing most SMEs lack or they don't have access to easily is financing. With financing, we can break barriers, they can grow, they can develop, they can capacitize. And those are some of the things that we shall be doing along with the Secretariat as well, to see how to capacitize them, to bring in innovative solutions, to bring in technology as well, to train them and build them from the SME to become multinationals as well.
The MOU, which comes on the sidelines of the 30th AGM of Afri-Exim Bank, is expected to last 3 years.
And the Executive Vice President of the Intra-African Trade Bank, Kanayo Awani, is urging young entrepreneurs in Africa to take advantage of the African Trade Gateway, which is an enabler for business connectivity with information ranging from marketing strategy, due diligence of partners on the continent, and the Pan-African Payment Settlement System.
From Cairo to Cape Town, Accra to Algiers, SMEs that want to do business with their counterpart in this part of Africa often find it difficult to get information to enable them to transact business and expand beyond their borders. This undermines the drive to scale up intra-African trade, which is hovering around 15% compared to over 50% within the EU. Now, thanks to Afri-Exim Bank, a one-stop shop platform, that the Africa Trade Gateway has been created to provide all vital information of SMEs on the continent to facilitate trade.
So once you're in that system, seeking to do business with Africa, you can start by visiting the trader. For instance, it doesn't mean that's the only place you can start. You can even start by starting with the customer application portal to identify markets and potential buyers of his goods, and services.
Trade financing and other financial products, including freight and logistics, can be obtained through the Africa Trade Gateway platform.
So you can navigate there the regulatory requirements of trade, where to buy goods, what the raw materials are. Those were the gaps we saw in lack of access to market information, trade and market information in developing the portal. So you go through it to even identify markets and the rules of trade in various countries. So once an opportunity for trade has been decided, the entity will be able to identify potential counterparties also on ATEX to trade under the AFCFTA market requirements, and then can conduct comprehensive due diligence on those counterparties in order to be assured of the authenticity and trust.
The value proposition of the African Trade Gateway is matching requests in any part of Africa within one window and making payment in local currency, a drive towards de-dollarizing the market in Africa. Edward Nyaku, reporting for GBC News.
Now, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, and other stakeholders have commended Ghana's border communities that are hosting refugees or displaced persons in the country. However, conflict of resources continues to affect peace and security and economic inclusion in most of such host communities. Government has therefore been called upon to resource those host communities to make their lives comfortable. These were the highlights of the commemoration of World Refugee Day in Accra, tagged Hope Away from Home.
To over 10,000 refugees. The latest arrivals are from neighboring Burkina Faso and are being hosted by communities in Boko in the Upper East region. However, the country representative of UNHCR, Madame Esther Kiragu, says those host communities and their amenities are not endowed enough to absorb the pressure.
They want to contribute in the local economy where they are. They want to help the host so that they can coexist better. But I like to underline that unless we do something about the absorption capacity around schools and social services, we are likely to have conflicts around resources.
The UN Resident Coordinator in Ghana, Mr. Charles Abani, emphasized that there should be a holistic intervention to ensure equitable access to resources in host communities.
How are we targeting host communities with other interventions that relieve the pressure of their actual hospitality? So I think the hospitality of everybody relies heavily on there being adequate resources.
The Executive Secretary at the Ghana Refugee Board, Mr. Tetepadi, mentioned livelihood and skills training as some of major assistance given to refugees in Ghana.
It is important that we put our shoulders to the wheel and do our bit to support refugees in order to help them support themselves, because that's what they really want to do. We have several success stories of refugees who have undergone livelihood training and have been able to look after themselves, their families, and extended even beyond that.
An exhibition was held for refugees from Togo, Liberia and other countries who have lived in Ghana for years and gone through skills training for such economic ventures. For GBC News, Oferiwa Dakon reporting.
And let's take you to the foreign front and look at what's happening. Now, the U.S. Coast Guard has confirmed that a Canadian P-3 submarine aircraft detected underwater noises now in the search area for the missing Titanic submarine. U.S. media citing internal U.S. government memos describe them as banging sounds. Contact with the miniature sub, which has 5 people on board, was lost on Sunday as it made 3,800 meters descent to the Titanic wreck. The sub's air supply is expected to run out on Thursday at around 11 BST or 10 o'clock GMT. Now on board is British-Pakistani businessman Shahzadi Dawood and his son Suleiman, along with British explorer Hamish Harding. Paul-Henri Nagelet, a former French Navy diver, is also in the vessel, as is Stockton Rush, chief executive of OceanGate, the firm behind the dive. Now, the Titan submersible could be in ultra-deep water. The craft is capable of reaching 4,000 meters in depth. It was on its way to the site of the Titanic wreck, which lies on the ocean seabed at a depth of 3,800 meters. The submarine lost contact about 1 hour and 45 minutes into its 2-hour dive to the wreck, and there has been no sign of it so far. And to the African continent, more than 20 people arrested in Uganda in connection with Friday's school massacre have been accused of collaborating with the rebel group blamed for carrying out the killings. Among those held are the director and head teacher, who have not commented. Officials say there may have been a dispute over the ownership of the school, where the 42 people died. The army say Islamic State-linked militants were behind the attack, but other motives are being investigated. They belonged to the Allied Democratic Forces, ADF, a group created in the 1990s and took up arms against President Yoweri Museveni, alleging persecution of Muslims. It is now largely based in neighboring Democratic Republic of Congo.